We are live, apparently. A very good evening to you all. Welcome to the Mythical Ireland Library. I'm Anthony Murphy. This is Live Irish Myths, the series that has been running since the 12th of March 2020, at the very beginning of something we call the pandemic, which I hope is soon to become a thing of the past. You're very welcome. Pardon me. You're very welcome to the Mythical Ireland Library this evening. We are simultaneously live streaming on the Mythical Ireland YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mythical Ireland, and also on the Mythical Ireland Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Mythical Ireland. If you are watching, please do say hello, and we'll say hello back. This episode was postponed from yesterday evening. I had very, very important duties to fulfill in the form of entertaining my wife on our wedding anniversary. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. How she has lasted and endured my bad jokes and my snoring and my hobbies and interests and my, photography escapades and my running around the country doing talks. I don't know. The woman is a living saint. Charlie Grover is the first one in the house tonight, saying hello from Facebook. Hello, Charlie. You're very welcome to Live Irish Myths. And Scott Doherty's in the house, watching from across the Atlantic. And it's very good to see you, Anne. Hope you enjoyed your night out. I certainly did. I rolled home. I was full of very good food. And there were a few drinks had as well, I'll have to be honest. Anna L. is down the road in Ballyabrigeen in the county of Dublin. Hello, Anna L. You're very welcome. Janet Moran is saying good afternoon from Boston. Janet, it is a pleasure. Your comment did appear and was moved out of the way. Anne McCallum is saying hello. Anton and Mighty too. I hope you enjoyed a lovely celebration last night and hope everyone's good form and all set for another wonderful live stream. Yes, indeed. And thank you very much for the lovely card. And that was very, very thoughtful. We watched the card. Yes, digital card, people. It was lovely. Stephen O'Hara. Hello, Anthony, and the rest of the two. I hope you rekindled the spark. The fire is always blazing, Stephen. The fire of romance, yes, 24 years. I don't feel old enough to be married 24 years. Just for the record, I don't. Maria in Sweden is tuning in. Hello, Maria. A very good evening to you, to all our friends in Sweden and in Scandinavia. I hope that you are well. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. Barbara Barney is in the house. Hello, Barbara. Welcome back to the library. Mandy McCurl is here. Good evening, everyone, from it's sunny in Mull and it's cloudy in the Boyne Valley. What's going on, Mandy? You stole our weather. Congratulations to you both. Thanks indeed. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you. Daisy Peters, good afternoon to you, Daisy, in the Southern Hemisphere. Yes, it is. Rio is in the Southern Hemisphere. And very good of you to join us. Wayne Bird is in the house. Glad you had a good time. Yes, more jokes, please. Definitely don't encourage. No, you can't say stuff like that, but you can, really. Sue Prenter is in Retford visiting her daughter and grandchildren. Hope you had a wonderful anniversary. Brilliant stuff. Something you probably couldn't do during the earlier parts of the pandemic, Sue. So isn't it great to be able to do it and say hello, give them all a big hug and a kiss and spoil them rotten. Robert Friend is in the house. Good evening to you, Robert, or good afternoon. Starlight Spellsinger is here. Hope that you enjoyed your wedding anniversary. Do you know, I really did, actually. I did, definitely. Now, I had a full belly. I'll be honest. I was fairly stuffed. But sure, look, once in a while, Rosanna Marsh. Hello, Rosanna. Good afternoon, good evening, good night. And in case I don't see you, good morning and good afternoon as well. Archaeastronomy Database is in the house. Yes, we are beginning our 25th revolution around the sun, or orbit around the sun, should I say. Thank you, Ty. Very good to see you. Ria is saying, just watched your lecture from 2019 on Megalithomania UK. Loved it. Which one? I gave 2 that year. One was more general about the Brunabonia alignments and mythology, and the other one was about Dronehenge. But thank you. And they're both on the Megalithomania YouTube channel if anyone wants to pop over and watch. Desiree Riley is in the house. Missed you all the last 2 weeks. So happy to be tuning in, although I might be cutting in and out for the first 15 minutes because I'm driving back up to the ranch. That's perfectly okay. It usually takes 15 minutes for us to get through all the greetings and get started. Anyway, the full Irish Gary's in the house. Another fine day on the sod. Do you know, honestly, it was a little bit grey, but nice that the heat has it's cool again. Not that I was complaining, but you know what I mean. Joe Butler is saying in Colorado it's only 22 Celsius today. Nice. Congratulations on your anniversary. All the best, Anne. Thank you, Auntie Joe. And Joe, if you get a minute, you might share the stream onto the community. But 22 sounds nice. Yeah. Rosanna is watching from Fishhook in Cape Town. Oh, wow. Probably our most southerly observer at this moment in time, or our viewer. Dina Sparks is in the house. Sounds like you had a good evening. I see you're back on Facebook tonight. D Sparks 61 or whatever it was on YouTube. I wonder which is better, actually, which is more reliable. I think a lot of people say YouTube is more reliable for the stream. Indira Stefaniana is in Hollywood. We're sweltering in high temperatures. Happy to see you and hear you. Well, we were sweltering, but our high temperatures, we topped out, as I said yesterday evening. We topped out at about 30 degrees Celsius, maybe 31, which is the equivalent of about 86, 87 Fahrenheit. So not too bad, But yeah, it's a lot hotter in parts of the States, definitely. Mariana Dunn is here. Hope the anniversary dinner was grand. Well, it was just grand is exactly what it was. And I don't know who it was that was talking about whiskey last week. It was a lady saying she didn't think Tullamore Dew was that good. Because she thought Redbreast 12 was better. I had a couple of Redbreast 12s last night. Oh, that stuff goes down like honey, And thank you for the congratulations, Ria, indeed. Robert Friend is in Paisley. Is that Paisley in Scotland, is it? Yes, Michael Trott is saying, Kia ora, Anthony, congrats on the wedding. Annie, I shall be travelling there, a road trip there in September. Brilliant. Best wishes, fair weather to all. Mixed here in New Zealand, morning from here. It's always a great delight for me to say good morning to our viewers in New Zealand and Australia and in Oceania and in the Far East. Michael, great to see you, and thank you for the best wishes. If you're here in September, sure, look, give us a shout. We might be able to hook up for a half an hour and shake hands and have a quick chat. Catherine Woodruff is in the house in central Wisconsin. A very good afternoon to you, Catherine. Tom King is in the house, and he's saying that a dram is ready to wish the captain and his good lady a happy anniversary. Sláinte you. Any excuse, Kinger. I know, I'm only joking. But yeah, thank you, indeed. It's younger I'm getting. I'm telling you. This love thing is just great, long-lasting love. Yvette Tillema is telling us about the beautiful weather in the Adirondack Mountains, and I still don't know whether I'm pronouncing that right or not. I've recently read Circa, and I'm very interested in the correlations, hoping my internet holds out. Yeah, well, I'm hoping that we'll do 2 or 3 episodes about classical mythology and see if we can identify correlations with Irish mythology. Pat says, preach it, son. Is that about the love? Yes, absolutely. Karen Murphy-Beglin is in the house. Good evening to you, Karen. Irish technical thinker who is Marcus. Greetings to you, Marcus. Very good evening from County Louth to our friends in Belfast. Leon Lech is saying, greetings from the heatwave-riddled Sasna. England 25F. Well, I think that's 25C, I presume. It's a little bit on the cooler side. I mean, didn't you guys hit 40 there recently, or maybe early 40s? Unbelievable stuff. Neil Hughes is watching from Coatbridge in Scotland, and Mary. Fion Jarrag Abu, great to see you both. I know that Mondays are sort of tied up for you these days. So, there are benefits to changing the stream from a Monday to a Tuesday, for some anyway. Helena Breen is in the house. Very good evening to you, Helena. Laura Puente is also in the house. Catching you all while I'm on vacation in rainy Colorado. I refuse to believe it. Isn't Colorado dry and sunny all the time? Says you. No, unfortunately it isn't. Sorry. I just need to see something on the screen. Apologies. Wow. It's raining in Colorado. Colorado probably needs it. Helen Hirsch Chatter is watching from the Black Hills. Hi, Anthony, and all the rest. Happy anniversary. Thank you very much indeed. And Robert says, yes, Scotland. Yes, indeed. Yes, we had a viewer from Paisley who lived latterly in Paisley in Scotland, who's the late Kelly Edmiston, fondly remembered. John Main is watching from a dry but cool Belmullet. Trusting Anthony had a grand evening yesterday and hoping everyone here is hale and hearty. And the same to yourself, John. I hope that you are keeping in good form. Adrian Beglin is also here. I wonder, are we fighting over devices? No, I'm joking. But obviously watching from separate accounts. I like that. It's like, his and hers, Who else? Rex Fortenberry from Louisiana. May Zeus be with you, Tua. Yes, indeed. Good evening to you, Rex, or good afternoon. And Lou Abu, as they say. Salav is in the house. Hope you both have a wonderful year. Lovely day here on the shores of Lough Neagh, watching the sun over the Sperrins. Lovely stuff. Good to see you, Salav. Hope you are in fine fettle. 16 million in chat, says Irish Technical Thinker. Brilliant stuff. Excellent. Yes, if they could all donate a euro each, we'll have that Mythical Ireland retreat centre that I've been thinking about for the last while. And that seems to be us up to date, I think. And Robert says, been in Scotland 20 years now. Wow. There's worse places in the world that you could be. There's worse places than a place that's named after an Irish tribe. I kid you not. I know. A lot of you know that because we talked about it before. And are we okay? We are on. Yes, indeed. So I wanted to say, look, I have lots and lots and lots of books about classical mythology. Actually, I couldn't say too many. You can never have too many books, The problem always is that you don't have enough shelves to support the books. I've decided that, certainly for tonight anyway, in order to introduce us to the subject of classical mythology, I'm going to read from what is, I think, or has been over time, one of the most popular volumes about classical mythology, and that is The Myths of Greece and Rome by H.A. Gerber, published in London, which is this lovely hardback book, and originally published in 1907, reprinted 1907, 1908, 1909, 1910, 1911, twice, 1912, 1915, 1917, 1919, 1920, 1921, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 29, 31, 34. Wow. Amazing, right? Second edition, revised, first published 1938. Reset and reprinted 1943. Reprinted 44, 46, 48, 52, 53, 55, 56, 58, 60, 63, 65, 67, 69, 71, 75, 77, 78, 81. So this one is obviously from 1981. Isn't that amazing? What a track record. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's a very good place to start. Now, before I do start, I want to just reintroduce you to something I think I showed off last week or the week before, which was this beautiful book that I bought in a secondhand bookshop. And that is the Usborne Book of Greek Myths. Obviously, for children or for youngsters, if you wanted to sort of refamiliarize yourself with the Greek myths, but you didn't want to read tomes of material, this is just beautiful. And I've actually been reading it. And it is just beautifully presented, with all these beautiful paintings and illustrations, And I just think it's fabulous. And large print, easy to, the Minotaur and the Labyrinth, easy to get through. Oh, and the cover is beautiful too. Now, the other Bullfinch, of course, there's Bullfinch. I'm sure any of you who are interested in mythology know about Bullfinch. But probably one of the standard sort of scholarly must-haves is the dual volume, and I'll show it for you now, to you even, is the dual volume Greek. Well, this is Greek, of course, not classical per se. This is the Greek stuff, and that is Robert Graves' The Greek Myths in 2 volumes, parts 1 and 2. And that's where, you get hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of reading and scholarly insight. And there are lots more. I mean, for instance, I have a Penguin encyclopedia or dictionary of classical mythology. I have several older books that have been sort of reprinted in recent years. Yeah, and as I say, Bullfinch. But tonight we're with Huerber, so that's where we're going to start anyway. We are. Any moment now. If I can get these books back into where they belong on the shelves, we could do that afterwards, Anthony. Let's not panic. We are live after all. You can't leave the camera for too long. Now, let me have a look at any comments. Yvette is there, but the internet cuts out, and I hope that resolves itself. John Main just got a copy of the Usborne book for his granddaughter. Wow, there you go. Paula Snow Queen is in the house. Good evening, Paula. Welcome. Now, so anyway, let's shall we make a beginning? The middle, the beginning, and the end. What time are we on? 15. Great. So this is called Chapter 1, The Beginning. Suitably enough. Is everybody comfortable? Make sure you have a lovely chair. If you're a little bit cool, maybe a throw over or some sort of blanket. If you're a little bit warm, I hope you're in a t-shirt or something light. Or maybe you're stripped from the waist up. That's, we don't need to see. And that you have a comfortable or nice drink. Maybe it's a cup of tea or herbal tea. Maybe it's a latte or a cappuccino or something fancy like that. Maybe it's a smoothie. Maybe it's a milkshake. Maybe it's a soda. Maybe it's a vodka. Maybe it's a whiskey. But I hope, whatever it is, that it's nice. Steve Martinson is in the house from Monona, Wisconsin. I love the sound of the rain in the background. Is it raining there? Because there's no rain here, so I presume that's in your background and not in mine. Yes. Sheila Gunn says, very warm, sitting on the deck with a beverage. Sounds nice, Sheila. Absolutely. So here we go. Mythology is the science treating of the legends and fables of the ancient world, which is a fascinating statement, obviously published first in 1907. Mythology, I don't view mythology as a science per se, but there you go. Mythology is a science, according to H.A. Gerber. Though we now call these quote-unquote myths, which is practically the same thing as calling them fairy tales, we must not forget that to the Greeks and Romans, they were part of their religion. Among all the pre-Christian races who were sufficiently advanced to think, speak, and write about their religious beliefs, the Jews alone claimed to have received a direct revelation from God. And the Jews alone declared that there was but one God, eternal and almighty. Other nations, quote, deemed either fire or wind or the swift air or the circle of the stars or the violent water or the lights of heaven to be the gods which govern the world, unquote. And to those gods they gave a great diversity of names, and round them they wove an immense variety of fables. Whiskey milkshake. Yes, indeed. Yes. Sorry. These fables were handed down by word of mouth from one generation to another, long before the art of writing was invented. Many of the earliest show that men soon began to wonder how the world around them, the sky over their heads, the birds, the beasts, all the wonders of nature, and especially they themselves, came into being. They were not slow to realize that none of these things just happened, and their ideas upon the subject were clothed in mythical language. Greek. I think we have a trying to get the attention of my daughter. I mean, if she wants to be a singing star on Live Irish Myths, that's perfectly okay. So if you hear singing, that's Tara. I mean, I'm happy to wheel her in and, give her the camera and the microphone, but it's incredible how shy she would get in that situation. A Greek poet, sorry. They were not slow to realize that none of these things just happened, and their ideas upon the subject were clothed in mythical language. And now El Doggo, younger Doggo, is making his voice heard. Thank you, Coda. Yes. A Greek poet called Hesiod, who lived about 8 centuries before Christ, wrote down many of the myths current among the Greeks of his time. Among the Romans, at the beginning of the Christian era, a poet called Ovid put into verse the views then generally held by thoughtful pagans. And of course, we know Ovid as the author of the famous Metamorphoses. Patricia Pack is in the house. Hubby and I will be 23 years next month. Brilliant stuff and fair play. And happy anniversary in advance. But do let us know when the time comes around. And here are a couple of the verses. Ere land or water was, or circling sky, throughout the world nature was uniform. What men call chaos, shapeless and obscure, where seethed the germs of things as yet to be. Not yet the pure light of the sun shone down, not yet the moon renewed her crescent horns. No globe hung poised in the enfolding air, nor did the sea with its long arms embrace the margent shores. Such was this vague, dark world, nor earth nor water yet, nor hot nor cold, nor soft nor hard, but indeterminate. And speaking briefly of Ovid, based upon his Metamorphoses, is a beautiful book that I picked up recently by Zachary Mason, who apparently got a huge amount of acclaim for The Lost Books of the Odyssey and Void Star. The Lost Books of the Odyssey is basically a retelling of a Homer. And I picked up this book and it's beautiful. It's Metamorphica is what it's called. And it's got the most lush and fabulous cover. Metamorphica by Zachary Mason. And of course, this is an attempt at retelling Metamorphoses by Ovid. I am going to have to remind my daughter that she is live on Irish. Anybody got any requests for karaoke? Office Care 36 Peter Woods is in the house. Hello and good evening. I sure look like I'd wave up the hill at you and you could see me. Anyway, this thing, I just sort of dipped briefly into it. I only have read a few very short pages of it. It looks beautiful, beautifully produced. And the old Wibbling and then the lovely cover. So I thought that was very interesting. So that's another one on the to be read pile, which is getting bigger by the minute, by the way. Kids are amazing, says Maria. Yes, indeed. Oh, they're great fun. They're great when they're in bed asleep at night too. I'm sorry. Once over this shapeless mass reigned a deity called Chaos, whose personal appearance could not be described, as there was no light by which he could be seen. He shared his throne with his wife, the dark goddess of night, named Nyx, Nyx, or Nox, Nox, whose black robes are still blacker, and still blacker countenance did not tend to enliven the surrounding gloom. These two divinities wearied of their power in the course of time and called their son Erebus, darkness, to their assistance. His first act was to dethrone and supplant chaos, and then Thinking he would be happier with a helpmeet, presumably a helpmate, he carried his own mother. Sorry, he married his own mother, Nyx. The ancients, who at first had no fixed laws, did not consider this union unsuitable, but recounted how Erebus and Nyx ruled over the chaotic world together until their two beautiful children, Aether, that's Aether, light, and Hemera, day, acting in concert, dethroned them and seized supreme power. And so we see the first mention of incest in the earliest story from Greek mythology, and we meet incest, of course, in Irish myth. So there's one crossover straight away. Erica Bow is in the house. Good afternoon, Erica. I hope you are keeping well, and welcome to the live stream. Space. And I think I'll just give Coda the book and let him read it. Space, illumined for the first time by their radiance, revealed itself in all its uncouthness. Aether and Hemera carefully examined the confusion, saw its many possibilities, and decided to evolve from it a, quote, thing of beauty, unquote. But quite conscious of the magnitude of such an undertaking, and feeling that some assistance would be desirable, they summoned Eros, Amor, or love, their own child, to their aid. By their combined efforts, Pontus, the sea, and Gaia, Gaea, in brackets also Ge or Telos or Terra, as the earth was first called, were created. Hence that Gaia is still, isn't it? I think Gaia is generally sort of given as a sort of poetic name for the earth. And then Pangea, I think, comes the notion of the single continent before plate tectonics separated the continents. Pangea is derived also from Gaia, isn't it? Who let the dogs out, says Sean. I know. He needs a muzzle, or maybe he just needs a walk. Yes. Nothing like a rainy afternoon, puppy cuddles, and Anthony reading myths while Coda translate for the pups. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. I'm reading and he's translating. Forgot about that. That's exactly what he's doing. In the beginning, the earth was not full of loveliness as it is now. No trees waved their leafy branches on the hillsides. No flowers blossomed in the valleys. No grass grew on the plains. No birds flew through the air. All was silent, bare, and motionless. Eros, the first to perceive these deficiencies, seized his life-giving arrows and pierced the cold earth. Immediately, the brown surface was covered with rich green. Birds of many colours flitted through the foliage of the newborn forest trees. Animals of all kinds gambolled over the grassy plains, and swift darting fishes swam in the clear streams. All was now life, joy, and motion. And this is from Shelley. There was the heaven and earth at first, and light and love. Then Saturn, from whose throne time fell, an envious shadow. Such the state of the earth's primal spirits neath his sway, as the calm joy of flowers and living leaves before the wind or sun has withered them. Gaia, roused from her apathy, admired all that had already been done to beautify her, and, resolving to crown and complete the work so well begun, created Uranus, heaven. You might also say Uranus. I generally say Uranus, for reasons of internet meme jokes on that subject, which you're not going to repeat here. This version of the creation of the world, although but one of the many current with the Greeks and Romans, was the one most generally adopted. And this is from Hesiod. Her firstborn earth produced of like immensity the starry heaven, that he might sheltering compass her around on every side. Another popular version stated that the first divinities, Erebus and Nyx, produced a gigantic egg from which Eros, the god of love, emerged to create the earth. And of course, that is one of the five great creation myth themes, is the cosmic egg. The earth thus created was supposed by the ancients to be a disk instead of a sphere. Flat earth, anyone? As science has proved. The Greeks fancied that their country occupied a central position, and that Mount Olympus, a very high mountain, the legendary abode of the gods, was placed in the exact center. Now, there we see something that is common to a lot of not just mythologies, but sort of tribes or nations, where people say, we have it in Ireland. The center of our world is Ishnok, the sacred center, the omphalos, the umbilicus hiberniae, the umbilical, the belly button of Ireland. You meet it with Mount Meru, for instance, the holy mountain. So that's not peculiar to the Greeks at all. Their earth was divided into two equal parts by Pontus, the sea, equivalent to our Mediterranean and Black Seas, and all around it flowed the great river Oceanus in a, quote, steady, equable current, unquote, undisturbed by storm, from which the sea and all the rivers were supposed to derive their waters. Of course, we now know that 2/3 of the earth are covered in oceans and seas. The Greeks also imagined that the portion of the earth directly north of their country was inhabited by a fortunate race of men, the, quote, blameless Hyperboreans, unquote, who dwelt in continual happiness and enjoyed a never-ending springtide. Their homes were said to be, quote, inaccessible by land or by sea, unquote. They were, quote, exempt from disease, old age, and death, unquote, and were so virtuous that the gods frequently visited them and even condescended to share their feasts and games. A people thus favoured could not fail to be happy, and many were the songs in praise of their sunny land. It's been a while. Hello, all, says Jennifer Foley. Good evening, good afternoon, Jennifer, and welcome. South of Greece, also near the great river Oceanus, dwelt another nation, just as happy and virtuous as the Hyperboreans, the Ethiopians. They too often enjoyed the company of the gods, who shared their innocent pleasures with great delight. Far away in this same marvellous river, according to the poet Homer, were the beautiful Isles of the Blest, Blest, sometimes called the Elysian Fields, where mortals who had led virtuous lives and had thus found favour in the sight of the gods were transported without tasting of death, and where they enjoyed an eternity of bliss. There's another world or an afterlife. These islands had sun, moon, and stars of their own, and were never visited by the cold, wintry winds, that swept down from the north. And here is a quote from Homer's Odyssey. Here is a life that of all is the lightest for earth-born mortals. Here comes never the snow, nor a violent tempest and rainstorm. Here incessantly breatheth the breeze of the soft-voiced zephyr, sent by the ocean to bring to the land and its dwellers refreshment. The king of this happy realm was called Rhadamanthus. That's Rhadamanthus. He was a son of Zeus and Europa, whose legend will be related in due course. Erebus and Nyx were deprived of their power by Aether and Hemera, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, who did not long enjoy the possession of the scepter, for Uranus and Gaia soon forced them to depart and began to reign in their stead. They had not dwelt long on the summit of Mount Olympus before they found themselves the parents of 12 gigantic children, whose strength was such that their father, Uranus, greatly feared them. To prevent their ever making use of it against him, He seized them immediately after their birth, hurled them down into a dark abyss called Tartarus, and there chained them fast. These giants were called Titans, and we still use the word Titanic to describe something of vast size. Fascinating there is the idea that he hurled them down into a dark abyss, which is precisely what happened to the great ship of the same name on its maiden voyage. It was hurled down into the depths of a dark abyss. Thus early did the giant appear in legend. Fascinatingly, also in Irish mythology, of course, we have the story of Balor imprisoning his children for fear that the prophecy that he would be killed by a grandchild would come true. Um, although, didn't he? Um, yes, he imprisoned Ethna or Ethlin in a tower on Tory Island. This chasm was situated far under the earth, and Uranus knew that his 6 sons, Oceanus, Coeus, Creus, Hyperion, Iapetus, and Cronus, Cronus, as well as his 6 daughters, the Titanides, Ilia, Rhea, Themis, Thetis, Mnemosyne, and Phoebe. Fascinating there is that name Iapetus was given by the geologists to the ocean that once separated the 2 continents upon which different parts of Ireland were located before they were brought together 420 million years ago, something I've written about. Anyway, all of these 12 could not easily escape from its cavernous depths. The Titans did not long remain the sole occupants of Tartarus, for one day the brazen doors were again thrown wide open to admit the 3 one-eyed Cyclops, Brontes, Thunder, Steropes, or Stero. I think it's A's, isn't it? I'm not sure on the pronunciations, but then look, I'm not, the expert on Greek mythology. Steropes, lightning, and Arges, sheet lightning. We now know, of course, that fork lightning and sheet lightning are not really different. Lightning is. Anyway, let's not go there. Later born children of Uranus and Gaia, who helped the Titans to make the darkness hideous with their incessant clamour for freedom. In due time, their number was increased by the 3 terrible Centimani, 100-handed, Cottus, Briareus, and Gyges, who were sent thither by Uranus to share their fate. They're getting a little bit crowded down there in Tartarus. Dissatisfied with the treatment her children had received at their father's hands, Gaia remonstrated, but all in vain. Uranus would not grant her request to set the giants free, and whenever their muffled cries reached his ear, he trembled for his own safety. Angry beyond all expression, Gaia swore revenge and descended into Tartarus, where she urged the Titans to conspire against their father and attempt to wrest the scepter from his grasp. The only one of the Titans who had the courage to obey her was the youngest, Cronus. He was called Saturn by the Romans, and from the resemblance between his name and the Greek word chronos, meaning time, which is where we get chronology from, was early identified with time, the devourer, time the devourer of all things. Gaia set him free, gave him a scythe, and sent him forth, bidding him return victorious. Thus, armed and admonished, Cronus came upon his father unawares, defeated him, thanks to his extraordinary weapon, and after binding him fast, took possession of the vacant throne, intending to rule the universe forever. Enraged at this insult, Uranus cursed his son and prophesied that a day would come when he too would be supplanted by his children. And here we go, the prophecy of the ruler being overtaken by offspring, Yes, indeed. Cronus paid no heed to his father's imprecations, but calmly proceeded to release the Titans, his brothers and sisters, who, in their joy and gratitude at escaping from the dismal realm of Tartarus, expressed their willingness to be ruled by him. He chose his own sister, Rhea, also known as Cybele or Ops, for his consort, and assigned each of the others some portion of the world to govern. To Oceanus and Thetis, for example, he gave charge over the ocean and all the rivers upon earth, while to Hyperion and Phoebe he entrusted the direction of the sun and moon, which the ancients supposed were daily and nightly driven across the sky in shining chariots. Yes, indeed. Yes. Who drives them in Irish myths? That's the question. Peace and security now reigned on and around Mount Olympus, and Cronus congratulated himself on the result of his enterprise. One fine morning, however, he was told that a son had been born to him. The memory of his father's curse then suddenly returned to his mind. Anxious to avert the loss of his power, he hastened to his wife, determined to devour the child and thus prevent him from causing further annoyance. Gladly, Rhea placed the baby in his extended arms, but imagine her surprise and horror when she beheld it disappear down his gigantic throat. Time passed, and another child was born, but only to be met with the same cruel fate. One infant after another disappeared, devoured by time, which creates only to destroy. In vain, the bereaved mother besought the life of one little one. The hard hearted father would not relent. As her prayers seemed unavailing, Rhea finally resolved to obtain by stratagem what her husband denied. And as soon as her youngest son, Zeus, called by the Romans Jove or Jupiter, was born, she concealed him. Making sure I'm not missing any. Mark Guinan in Offaly. Hello, Mark. You're very welcome. Gordon Farrell is in the house. Hello, Gordon. Hope things are well. Are you in County Dublin or County Longford? Yes, indeed. And we were just talking about that. Donal also mentioned that Balor prophesied to be overtaken by his grandson. Kathy May Deo is in the house here on her lunch break. Well, I hope that you can enjoy some stories while you're here. Brilliant stuff. Cronus, aware of his birth, soon made his appearance, determined to dispose of him in the usual summary manner. For some time, Rhea pleaded with him, but at last pretended to yield to his commands. Hastily wrapping a large stone in swaddling clothes, she handed it to Cronus, feigning intense grief. Cronus was evidently not of a very inquiring turn of mind, for he swallowed the whole without investigating the real contents of the shapeless bundle. Lexi Erickson is in the house. Hello, Lexi. A very good evening to you. Julianne Osborne is here. Hello, Julianne. Welcome, welcome. Chungus Khan is also here. Yes, indeed. Allegorical. Yes, well, I think a lot of mythological symbolism is allegorical, isn't it? He seems to have had a very powerful digestive system, for he did not realize how he had been deceived, and Rhea then cast about for some means by which she could continue to conceal the deception. To ensure this, she entrusted her babe to the tender care of the Melian nymphs, who bore him off to a cave on Mount Ida, sort of protected, brought up in secrecy. There, a goat, Amalthea, was procured to act as nurse and fulfilled her office so well that she was eventually placed in the heavens as a constellation. To prevent Zeus's cries being heard in Olympus, the Curates, Rhea's priests, uttered piercing screams, clashed their weapons, executed fierce dances and chanted rude war songs. The real significance of all this unwanted noise and commotion was not at first understood by Cronus, who, in the intervals of his numerous affairs, congratulated himself upon the cunning he had shown to prevent the accomplishment of his father's curse. But all his fears were aroused when he suddenly became aware of. Sorry, I have to skip a few pages here because there are black and white plates depicting various figures. So, sorry. Yes, but all his fears were aroused when he suddenly became aware of the fraud practiced upon him and of young Zeus's continued existence. He immediately tried to devise some plan to get rid of him. But before he could put it into execution, he found himself attacked by his son, and after a short but terrible encounter, he was signally defeated. Zeus, delighted to have triumphed so quickly, took possession of the supreme power, and, aided by Rhea's counsels, and by a nauseous potion prepared by Metis, a daughter of Oceanus, compelled Cronus to produce the unfortunate children he had swallowed. Poseidon, Pluto, Hestia, Demeter, and Hera, called by their Romans, Neptune, Pluto, Vesta, Ceres, and Juno. The stone substituted by Rhea for the infant Zeus also came to light and was afterwards piously preserved at Delphi. And that's fascinating because Delphi, the stone of Delphi, was the omphalos, the equivalent of the stone of divisions at Ishnok, the Greek equivalent of the Irish stone of divisions, the omphalos, or the belly button, or the umbilicus, hibernia. Following the example of his predecessor, Zeus gave his brothers and sisters a fair share of his new kingdom. The wisest among the Titans, Mnemosyne, Themis, Oceanus, and Hyperion, submitted to the new sovereign without murmur, but the others refused their allegiance, which refusal, of course, occasioned a deadly conflict. And these are words from E.B. Browning. When gods began with wrath, and war rose up between their starry brows, some choosing to cast Cronus from his throne, that Zeus might king it there, and some in haste, with opposite oaths that they would have no Zeus to rule the gods forever. There you go. Patricia is having a grilled eggplant with garlic and a little cocktail to wash it down. That sounds quite delicious. Couldn't we have an invitation to come around and try it out? Brilliant. Well, enjoy that. That sounds lovely. Really, that sounds very, very nice. And we might as well continue. What time are we on? 13 minutes today. We will continue because, I mean, there's tons of stuff, you know. This is called the Giants' War. Zeus, from the top of Mount Olympus, saw the superior numbers of his foes and, quite aware of their might, cast about him for allies. In haste, therefore, he released the Cyclops from Tartarus, where they had languished so long, stipulating that in exchange for their freedom, they should supply him with thunderbolts, weapons which only they knew how to forge. And, well, they and Tom King, of course. Tom King is the only other one who knows how to forge such things. This new engine caused great terror and dismay in the ranks of the enemy, who nevertheless soon rallied and struggled valiantly to overthrow the usurper and win back the sovereignty of the world. During 10 long years, the war raged incessantly, but at the end of that time, the rebellious Titans were obliged to yield. Some of them were hurled into Tartarus once more, where they were carefully secured by Poseidon Zeus's brother, while the young conqueror joyfully proclaimed his victory. And this is from Homer. League all your forces then, ye powers above, join all and try the omnipotence of Jove. Let down our golden everlasting chain, whose strong embrace holds heaven and earth and main. Strive all of mortal and immortal birth to drag by this the thunderer down to earth. Ye strive in vain. If I but stretch this hand, I heave the gods, the ocean, and the land. I fix the chain to great Olympus's height, and the vast world hangs trembling in my sight. For such I reign, unbounded and above, and such are men and gods compared to Jove. Wow. Elizabeth is saying hello from Poland. A very good evening to you, Elizabeth. Welcome to Live Irish Myths. And apologies to Patricia for calling her Patrick. Sorry. The scene of this mighty conflict was supposed to have been in Thessaly, where the country bears the imprint of some great natural convulsion. For the ancients imagined that the gods, making the most of their gigantic strength and stature, hurled huge rocks at each other. Finn McCool, anyone? You know? Yes, indeed. And piled mountain upon mountain to reach the abode of Zeus the Thunderer. You know, Finn, the story of the Giant's Causeway. You know that Finn was throwing stones across to the giant in Scotland. His name doesn't immediately come to mind. And then decided he was going to build a causeway so that he could go over and scrap with the giant. Is that the same giant who came to visit Finn's mother? And Finn's mother wrapped Finn up as a baby and put him into a big cot, but he was a fully grown man. And when the other giant came in and said, "Who's that in the cot?" she said, "Oh, that's Finn's baby." And the Scottish giant was suddenly terrified, because he was like, "Oh, well, if that's the size of the baby, I'd hate to hang around to see the adult." And he scarpered. What was the name of the Scottish giant? Anyone? I know that Fingal was one of the giants, but that's not the one that is mentioned in the Giant's Causeway story. Anyway, somebody will mention it, I'm sure, in the chat. Cronus, or Saturn, withdrew to Hesperia, Italy, where he founded a prosperous kingdom and reigned in peace for many long years. In his old age, he seems to have become quite a pleasant person. Zeus, having disposed all of the Titans, now fancied Ben and Donner. Is that the name? Something like that, isn't it? Giant's Causeway, name of Scottish giant. Yeah, Ben, you're 100% right. Maureen, or yes, Maureen, but also Marcus. That's the name. Ben and Donner. When another giant, Ben and Donner, crossed the Irish Sea in Scotland, threatened Ireland, Finn retaliated by tearing up great chunks of the Antrim coastline and hurling them into the sea. Fascinating stuff. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Ben and Donner. Yes. Ben, interestingly, being an Irish word for a peak, or I think a mountain, you know. Zeus, having disposed of all the Titans, now fancied he would enjoy the power so unlawfully obtained. But Gaia, to punish him for depriving her children of their birthright, created a terrible monster called Typhoeus, or Typhon. Quote, Typhon huge, ending in snaky twine, unquote, as Milton calls him. This Typhoeus was a giant from whose body 100 dragon heads arose. Sounds a tiny little bit like we're into Mata territory here now. There's no mention of fire and dragon stuff in the Mata mythology. Flames shot from his eyes, nostrils, and mouths, while he incessantly uttered such blood-curdling screams that the gods in terror fled from Mount Olympus and sought refuge in Egypt. In mortal fear lest this terror-inspiring monster should pursue them, they there assumed the forms of different animals, and Zeus became a ram, while Hera, his sister and queen, changed herself into a cow. That's interesting, isn't it? On account of the fact that the chief of the deities in Ireland is Dagda, and his not his wife, but his not his concubine, because he wasn't married when he had an affair with Bowen. But Bowen is the white cow, the bright or white cow, the illuminated cow. The king of the gods, however, soon became ashamed of his cowardly flight, dead right, and resolved to return to Mount Olympus to slay Typhoeus with his terrible thunderbolts. A long and fierce struggle ensued, at the end of which Zeus, again victorious, viewed his fallen foe with arrogant pride, but his triumph was very short-lived. And I'm just thinking there about the Dagda killing the Mata, on top of Newgrange, by the way. Lech Ben, there's that word again, Ben, the peak, Enceladus, another redoubtable giant, also created by Gaia, now appeared to avenge Typhoeus. He too was signally defeated and bound with adamantine chains in a burning cave under Mount Etna. In early times, before he had become accustomed to his prison, he gave vent to his rage by outcries, imprecations, and groans. Sometimes he even breathed forth fire and flames in hopes of injuring his conqueror, and that's a myth, obviously, about occasional eruptions from Mount Etna. But time, yes, and actually, I might just take a note of fascinating stuff. But time, it is said, somewhat cooled his resentment, and now he is content with an occasional change of position, which, owing to his huge size, causes the earth to tremble over a space of many miles, producing what is called an earthquake. And there we go. Earthquake mythology as well. Fascinating stuff. Illuminated cow, says Naomi Serafina. Hello, Naomi, by the way. Would be a nice name for a band, or at least an album. Interesting, yes, indeed. And Desiree is imagining Tom King fashioning great thunderbolts for Anthony. This myth is one of several invented by the ancients to explain such natural phenomena as earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. And the following is a quote from Addison. "'Tis said that thunderstruck Enceladus, grovelling beneath the incumbent mountain's weight, lies stretched supine, eternal prey of flames. And when he leaves against the burning, when he heaves against the burning load, reluctant to invert his broiling limbs, a sudden earthquake shoots through all the isle, and Etna thunders dreadful underground, then pours out smoke in wreathing curls convolved, and shades the sun's bright orb and blots out day." Fascinating stuff. Zeus had now conquered all his foes, asserted his right to the throne, and could at last reign over the world undisturbed. But he knew that it would be no small undertaking to rule well heaven, earth, and sea, and resolved to divide the power with his brothers. To avoid quarrels and recriminations, he portioned out the world, allowing each of his brothers the privilege of drawing his own share. Poseidon thus obtained control over the sea and all the rivers, and immediately determined to wear a symbolic crown composed exclusively of seashells and water plants, and to remain within the bounds of his watery realm. Pluto, the most taciturn of the brothers, received for his portion the sceptre of Tartarus, and all the lower world, where no beam of sunlight was ever allowed to find its way, while Zeus reserved for himself the general supervision of his brother's estates and the direct management of heaven and earth. Sorry, I'm just taking a note here. In pencil, of course. Peace now reigned throughout all the world. Not a murmur was heard, except from the Titans, who, at length, seeing that further opposition would be useless, grew reconciled to their fate. In the days of their prosperity, the Titans had intermarried. Cronus had taken Rhea for better or for worse, and Iapetus had seen, loved, and wedded the fair Clymene, anyone? One of the ocean nymphs, or Oceanides, daughters of Oceanus. This last pair became the proud parents of 4 gigantic sons, Atlas, Menetius, Prometheus, and Epimetheus. And of course, Prometheus means forethought, and Epimetheus means afterthought, who were destined to play prominent parts in Greek mythology. Atlas we shall meet later. His name is very familiar, as it has been given not only to a range of mountains in Africa, but also to books of maps innumerable in Europe and America. So we'll tell the tale of Prometheus, which is 4 pages, and then I think we'll leave the episode at that for this one anyway, until we revisit and do the next one. In the great conflict between Cronus and Zeus, Prometheus, unlike his father Iapetus, had ranged himself with the Olympian gods. He was now chosen by Zeus to direct the important task of creating living beings to inhabit the empty, though beautiful world. In this undertaking, he was aided by his brother Epimetheus. Together they made birds, beasts, and fishes, giving to each gifts of strength, swiftness, beauty, or intelligence, according to their different needs. But it was Prometheus who last of all brought into existence the most intelligent, though not the strongest or the swiftest or the most beautiful of creatures, man. From a lump of clay, kneaded with water, Prometheus wrought an image resembling the high gods themselves, an image standing upright with its head lifted to gaze upon the stars. Where have we heard that before? That man was made in the image of God, huh? Yes, indeed. A familiar theme from the world of Christianity. But Epimetheus had been so lavish with his gifts to the other new beings that his elder brother decided to endow man with a gift which should surpass all the rest: the gift of fire. Prometheus soared heavenward and lit his torch at the eternal lamp of the sun. Then he descended to earth and bestowed upon humanity the divine spark, which, in the fullness of time, was to flame up into knowledge, art, commerce, and civilization. Amergin's fire in the head, perhaps. The one that Amergin mentions in his famous chant. You know, this divine spark that was to flame up into knowledge, art, commerce, and civilization. Hence the metaphor so dear to poets of Promethean fire. Then, according to the ancient poets, came the true age of gold, when men were, as they have never been since, happy, sinless, and peaceful. This was the legend in Milton's mind when, speaking of the angel's song on the morning of Christ's nativity, he wrote, "For if such holy song enwrap our fancy long, time will run back and fetch the age of gold. And speckled vanity will sicken soon and die, and leprous sin will melt from earthly mould. And hell itself will pass away, and leave her dolorous mansions to the peering day. Yea, truth and justice then will down return to men, orbed in a rainbow and like glories wearing. Mercy will sit between, throned in celestial sheen, with radiant feet the tissued clouds down steering. And heaven, as at some festival, will open wide the gates of her high palace tall. This age of gold was, in some ways, a rather monotonous time. The year was not divided into seasons, and perpetual spring reigned. The men who dwelt in this paradise had neither wives nor daughters. They were like Adam before the creation of Eve. They did not work. Why should they, when the earth brought forth everything that they needed? They had no arts or crafts. The plough, the loom, the potter's wheel were as yet unknown. Then came the age of silver, when Zeus divided the year into seasons, and for the first time mankind suffered the hardships of wind and weather, in particular on the west coast of Ireland, I might add. They took refuge in caves instead of dwelling happily in the open air. They had to plough and sow instead of harvesting rich crops which had sprung up of their own accord. The discipline of rough weather and hard work seems to have had anything but a good effect upon men. Soon they began to neglect the altars of the Olympian gods, and presently they had the audacity to dispute with Zeus himself and to claim greater privileges than the All Highest was disposed to grant. Prometheus sided with the presumptuous creatures he had made, and endeavouring to settle one disagreement in their favour, he played upon Zeus a trick which the god never forgot or forgave. The question at issue was what portions of an animal sacrifice should be dedicated to the gods and what should belong to man. Prometheus divided a sacrificial ox into two, and having stuffed the eatable parts into the skin, he slyly put a heap of ugly odd bits on the top. Then he covered the bones with what looked like fat and invited Zeus to choose between the two. According to one version of the story, the god chose the more attractive alternative and was very wroth when he found nothing but bones inside. According to another version, he saw through the trick but pretended to be deceived in order to have an excuse for punishing the now detested human race. This punishment was to deprive them of fire. But once more Prometheus came to their rescue and brought the precious flame down from the sky in a hollow fennel stalk. Such a hollow stalk is still used as a primitive means of carrying a light in some of the isles of Greece. Zeus inflicted upon the Titan a terrible penalty. Chained, there was a story about is that the one again featuring Balor, in which he eats coins or something disguised as meat, or can't precisely remember the details now, you know. Zeus inflicted upon the Titan a terrible penalty. Chained to a craggy peak of Mount Caucasus, Prometheus was doomed to have his liver gnawed at all day by a vulture. I don't think you pronounce the G. Gnawed. By night, what had been devoured grew again, so that the ghastly process should be renewed the next morning. This agony continued for many, many centuries, until at last Heracles, or Hercules, slew the vulture and set its victim free. According to Aeschylus, again, I'm not entirely sure of pronunciations, the Titan suffered for 30,000 years. Titan, to whose immortal eyes the sufferings of mortality, seen in their sad reality, were not as things that gods despise. That was thy pity's recompense, a silent suffering and intense, the rock, the vulture, and the chain, all that the proud can feel of pain. And that's from Byron's Prometheus. Meanwhile, the vindictive Zeus had resolved, with the aid and approval of his fellow gods, to mete out an overwhelming punishment to man. This was the creation of woman. Having endowed her with beauty, charm, a sweet voice, a graceful walk, an appealing manner, they called her Pandora, the gift of all the gods, and Hermes, or Mercury, the messenger of the immortals, escorted her down to earth and presented her to Prometheus, who was not then fettered to his Caucasian crag. Distrustful of Zeus and all his works, Prometheus turned his back resolutely on the lovely newcomer, but his more confiding young brother, Epimetheus, received her with joy. By way of a dowry, Pandora had brought with her, as a gift from Zeus himself, a sealed casket, which she had been solemnly warned not to open. You know, Eve and the apple, Bowen and don't approach the well. Oh, it's all there, isn't it? Yeah, sorry, it was Cridgenvel who was fed the coins. Donald says, yes, indeed. From it's caught my chura, isn't it? The All Highest had apparently realized that curiosity would be one of the characteristics of the new creature which he had invented to be the curse of man, for it was his intention that she should open the mysterious casket, and before very long she did. And then, alack, out flew a swarm of evil sprites, all the bodily and mental ills that ever since have tormented the human race. Out flew rheumatism, gout, blindness, and deafness. Out flew malice, pride, cruelty, and covetousness, each uglier and more malignant than the last. They darkened the air with their dusky wings, and Pandora recoiled in terror from what she had done. But in the very bottom of the casket there remained one sprite whose wings were not dusky, a little golden being whose name was Hope. Thus did the gods, with a torch of divine pity, light up the shadow which then descended upon man. And the age of silver, after the age of silver came the age of brass or bronze, wilder than the earlier ages, yet not wholly evil. And then came the graceless and sinister age of iron, when men's ways were so wicked that one by one the good divinities deserted them, the last to depart being Astrea, to be led Astrea, never mind, the goddess of innocence, daughter of Themis, the goddess of justice. Ancient poets used to prophesy that these goddesses would return to earth when another golden age should dawn. And that sounds a little bit like the prophecy or the belief in Ireland, the folk prophecy, that the Tuatha Dé Danann will return to Ireland. This is the idea behind the title of John Dryden's poem on the Restoration, Astrea Redux. Compare the stanzas from Milton quoted earlier in this chapter. Zeus had kept a close watch over men's actions during all these years, and their evil conduct aroused his wrath to such a point that he vowed he would blot out the human race. But as he could not decide which would be the best way to do this, he summoned the gods to aid him by their counsels. The first suggestion offered was to destroy the world by fire, kindled by Zeus's much dreaded thunderbolts. And the king of gods was about to put it into instant execution when his arm was stayed by the reminder that the rising flames might set fire to his own dwelling place and reduce its magnificence to ashes. He therefore rejected the plan as impracticable and bade the gods devise other means of destruction. After much delay and discussion, the immortals agreed to wash mankind off the face of the earth by a mighty flood. The winds were instructed to gather the rain clouds over the earth. Poseidon let loose the waves of the sea. Mighty flood and punishment. I mean, do you know what I mean? Which is the beginning of the Irish story in Laura Goala, the great flood and the granddaughter of Noah. Poseidon let loose the waves of the sea, bidding them rise, overflow, and deluge the land. No sooner had the gods spoken than the elements obeyed. The winds blew, the rain fell in torrents. Lakes, seas, rivers, and oceans broke their bonds, and terrified mortals, forgetting their petty quarrels in a common impulse to flee from the death which threatened them, climbed the highest mountains, clung to uprooted trees, and even took refuge in the light skiffs they had constructed in happier days. Their efforts were all in vain, however, for the waters rose higher and higher, overtook them one after another in their ineffectual efforts to escape, closed over the homes where they might have been so happy, and drowned their last despairing cries in their seething depths. And that is, fascinatingly, that is it so far. I'm going to see briefly. Let's see. So Eve and Pandora and Bowen, you know. Yeah, so this is the version from, and this is Pandora's box, and that beautiful illustration. You know, all of the evil sprites and dragons and things emerging from the box. This is the one as it is told in the Usborne book of Greek myths. One morning, Zeus awoke to the delicious smell of freshly baked bread. He'd spent all night at a party with the other gods and was feeling rather tired and grumpy, so you can see some licenses taken to entertain the youngsters. Hestia, bring me some of that bread for my breakfast, he shouted somewhat rudely. His sister was the only one of the gods who ever did any baking. Hestia's puzzled face appeared around the door. I don't know who's baking bread, but it's not me, she said. Who else can it be? Grumbled Zeus, getting out of bed. He followed the smell out of the palace to a gap in the clouds. When he peered down through it, his face darkened with anger. Dotted across the world below, like little red flowers, were hundreds and hundreds of merrily burning fires. Zeus roared with rage. Humans aren't supposed to have fire, he bellowed. Only we gods have the power to handle it properly. He stormed down to earth immediately and seized the first man he came to by the scruff of the neck. Who gave you fire? He demanded. Prometheus, the Titan, the man blurted, turning pale. That troublemaker, Zeus muttered. I might have guessed. He dropped the man in a heap on the ground and charged away. Prometheus was at home eating breakfast with the Epimetheus, his brother, when Zeus burst through the door. How dare you give the humans fire? He thundered. Epimetheus leaped to his feet in alarm, but Prometheus didn't look the slightest bit worried. Why shouldn't they have fire? He asked, rolling his eyes. I felt sorry for them, shivering with cold on dark nights, and I could tell they were tired of eating nothing but raw food. Sushi, anyone? Zeus turned purple and looked as though he might explode. It wasn't yours to give, he roared. You must have stolen it. Yes, that was easy enough, Prometheus boasted. Yesterday, while you gods were at your party, I lit a stalk from the sun and carried it down to the earth. He smirked and added, I taught the humans how to use fire and how to keep it going. You can't take it back now. That was more than Zeus was prepared to stand for. I'll teach you how it feels to have something stolen, he shouted. He grabbed Prometheus by the arm and began to drag him out of the house. However defiant he was feeling, Prometheus was no match for a god. Farewell, brother, he called to Epimetheus. A word of warning, don't take anything from the gods unless you're prepared to face the consequences. Zeus took Prometheus to a mountain and chained him there. You can stay here and take your punishment until you're sorry, he said. Every day, a giant eagle sent by Zeus would swoop down on the Titan. Slowly and agonizingly, it would peck out his liver. But although this would have been painful enough to kill anyone else, Prometheus did not die. Every night, his liver grew back, only for the eagle to arrive next morning and peck it out all over again. I wonder, does the eagle represent some sort of alcoholism, you know? Amazingly, Prometheus didn't regret what he'd done. You can torture me until the end of time, he yelled up to the clouds. I won't ever be sorry. Zeus called all the other gods to a meeting in Olympus and told them what had happened. He was furious with the humans for accepting the gift of fire from Prometheus and had come up with a way to punish them. Working together, the gods sculpted a perfect woman's figure out of clay. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, showered her with beauty. Zeus's daughter, Athena, dressed her in a shimmering gown, and Hermes, Zeus's son, hid a bundle of curiosity in her heart. Then the gods all breathed life into her. The woman's eyes flickered open, and she looked around in wonder. "Who are you?" she asked. "We are the gods," Zeus answered. "Your name is Pandora. You are to be the wife of a titan named Epimetheus." He pressed into her hands a large decorated box. "This is a wedding present," he said. "You may keep it in your house, but you must never open it." By the way, this story is short and will end shortly. "Why not?" Pandora asked. "What's in it?" "It's time for you to go now," Hermes told her. Give me 1 second. So check something. I do apologize for a moment. Sorry about that. I just realized I had something open there that could potentially make noise, which is the Facebook Messenger. You may keep it in your house, but you must never open it. "Why not?" Pandora asked. "What's in it?" "It's time for you to go now," Hermes told her, ignoring her question and briskly taking her arm. "I'll escort you to your husband's house." When Epimetheus opened the door of his house to find a beautiful woman and a smiling god standing on the doorstep, his brother's warning vanished entirely from his mind. Come in," he said to his guests. He and Pandora got along wonderfully. In fact, they were so in love after an hour of meeting one another that they arranged to get married that very day. Las Vegas, how are you? When the wedding celebrations were over and the couple went home, Epimetheus noticed the decorated box. "Where did that come from?" he asked his wife. "It's a wedding gift from Zeus," Pandora replied, picking up the box and staring at it wistfully. "He gave it to me before I'd even met you and said we must never open it." "Then we should do as he says," Epimetheus said firmly. He took the box from her and placed it on a shelf. Pandora nodded, but she couldn't help wondering what was inside it. The next time she was alone in the house, she picked it up again and held it in her lap, tracing the decorations on the lid with her fingers. "What use is a box we can't open?" she asked herself. When her husband came home, she put it back hurriedly and said nothing. One morning, a few days later, she was waving goodbye to him through the window when the box caught her eye again. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it for a while. Her curiosity burned inside her. They say curiosity killed the cat and all that, Perhaps Zeus meant I shouldn't open it before I was married, she said to herself. Yeah, that's what he meant, Um, and she took the box down from the shelf. What harm can it possibly do if I just have a little look? She took a deep breath and opened the lid a tiny crack. A terrible screeching filled the air, and the contents of the box burst out, flinging the lid from her hands. Pandora watched helplessly as hundreds of writhing, horrible things billowed into the air. There were things that people had never experienced before: war, disease, hatred, malice, jealousy. They whirled around, filling the room, and then seeped out of the open window and spread into the rest of the world. Sorry. Apologies. For a few moments, Pandora was unable to move. She sat staring at the box, numb with despair at what she'd done. Then, as she watched, one last little thing fluttered out. It was pretty and delicate, and not at all like the other things. It flew up out of the window and into the sky, leaving a trail of light behind it. Pandora watched it fly away, and, despite herself, she felt her heart lift. The very last thing that would come out of the box was hope. So, from that moment, although life on Earth would never be easy again, no matter what terrible hardships they had to endure, people never gave up hope. That's the children's version. Here you go. that's all we're going to do in Classical Mythology tonight. Eve Peter's asking, yeah, well, Eve, as in, clearly there are parallels, that Eve is the one who causes, sin to happen. Eve is the one who is the convenient scapegoat, but maybe that's not what you meant by your question. Sandra Boothroyd, yes, indeed. Thank you. Glad you enjoyed it. And next time, indeed. Hopefully next Monday. All going well. Aquila, quill writing. Yes, Aquila the Eagle. Indeed. Too much information, says Salif. Yes, some interesting discussions and conversations going on in the chat. Maybe eating at the human condition, inspiring us on our evolutionary journey, pecking out the liver, I presume you're talking about. Considering how we invented this excellent thing called bakery, the gods should give us fire willingly. Yes, indeed. I mean, scones, cinnamon rolls, cinnamon buns, and all manner of eclairs and all those yummy things. And bread, of course. But look, that goes without saying, Anyway, that is it for now. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. Don't forget, as always, to consider becoming a patron of Mythical Ireland, which is here. That's the address. There's a 1,000-word article for patrons only at the moment, describing the latest hunt for sub-aqua treasures in the Boyne in the form of dugout boats. Also coming soon, first for patrons, is a first look at the 2023 Mythical Ireland calendar. So please do consider you can become a patron for the price of a cup of coffee a month or a couple of cups of coffee a month. It's very little. And the higher the level you support at, the more rewards that you get. Amber Lynn, you are going to have to watch the whole thing back because we are just finishing. But it's good to see you. I'm happy. Happy Tuesday. Good evening to you, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Good morning. And hopefully you'll enjoy the replay. Adina Sparks, a very good evening to you. Thank you, Desiree. Very vociferously aided by Coda tonight with his doggy translations. That was a Herculean broadcast, says Tom King. Take care, my friends. And indeed, see you very soon, Tom. Hopefully. Thanks, and McCallum. Lots of connections. Yes, indeed. Always really, which is one of the reasons, by the way, some Irish medieval scholars think Irish mythology was borrowed from classical mythology because of those similarities. But these scholars have never read Campbell and Young and just the comparative stuff. This stuff arises, almost independently from one culture to another. Ihawa, Adrian, and see you next week. Hopefully, Amber Lynn. Oh yes, we did already say hello. Yummy baked goods, says Patricia. Neil Hughes, I'll raise a glass. Mine will be white, but I'll raise a glass to yourself and Mary. Good to see you both. Long time no see. And no problem, Joe. I'm glad you enjoyed the episode. Wonderful days ahead being wished by Salif. A gra agus siachon, love and peace. Makes me want to rename all of the planets with Irish gods. Fun, absolutely. I'm with you on that one. Definitely with you on that one, Katie. Tarini Pendleton says Guramagot agus Tufain Mila Boychas Guji Mokarja Galer or Fudon Down, who come into the Lowerlin every week to watch this and to join in the fun. And there is a bit of fun too, I like to think. We'll see you all very soon. Thank you indeed also to all those of you who have joined the Mythical Ireland community on Facebook, which I'm glad to report as of yesterday reached 20,000 members and rising steadily. So next milestone is 25,000, but I suppose the next big milestone is 50,000. So let's see when that happens. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Mandy. Jungian Jean Shinoda Bolin suggested for further reading in terms of mythological commonalities or what. Anyway, you can message me that separately, Mandy. Um, yes, indeed. 20,000, Jim. Yeah, I know. Brilliant. Olwen, Roy Badzek, Ihoa, and Slonga Foal, as they say. Toga Buge is the last thing that's usually said. Archetypes, yes, indeed. Brilliant. Yes, 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 yes. Must look that lady and her writings up. Anyway, good night, all. And thanks to Coda the dog for the doggy translations. Thank you to Tara for the wonderful improvised karaoke singing. And next time we will be continuing with our exploration of Greek and Roman mythology. And who knows, we might do a little bit more in terms of maybe some Native American stuff at some point, and some of the Chaldean, Babylonian, Sumerian, and maybe some Far Eastern as well. You know, there's tons of stuff. Anyway, that's episode 190 done with. We'll see you all very soon. Ikawa Kulasov, Slán go Fol, and most importantly, Toga Buge, take it easy. Good night, Boherly.